Good morning and welcome to another video cast by Henley Consulting, the specialist management consulting firm for the $120 billion FPD display market. And recently we've started getting really fascinated by the notion of industrial policy because Korea in particular is looking at protections for its OLED industry. It's very clear for the last decade that China has been looking to support its own domestic industry, both through national level plans, but then also through regional and city level subsidies. So the whole notion of whether governments should support their high-tech industries for the development of their economies, and then what specifically each one of the countries might look at doing is of absolute fascination to me. Also in the US, there's the CHIPS Act, and then people are trying to think about what part does and role do displays play within that also as being a nationally important industry. So today we're going to talk about where Japan stands overall and what we think about the industrial policy and other industry options for the two main Japanese players, and then summarize. But that's it. It's a fascination with industrial policy and the link to competitiveness in the display industry. So just to reiterate, this is my usual innovation ladder ranking where I put at the bottom level one is if you've got the money and can buy the tools to get into standard amorphous silicon LCD. That's pretty much the easiest thing to do. There are quite a number of players, if you count them all up in total, that live down in that world, including HKC, which is a large Chinese player, pretty much a amorphous silicon only company at the moment, although we'll talk about them later because they have aspirations to do a deal with JDI. Then you've got levels 2 and 3, which are actually about the ability at glass and polyimide OLED, where again, to some degree, you can buy the equipment if you buy the same as everybody does and work hard on it for 5 years, and you can eventually get there. So it's got to the point where, if you are a relatively decent multinational with some depth in engineering, you can get to a starting position over 5 to 10 years in OLED. And then you get to the top ranks where basically at level 4, I'm arguing then you're talking about a high level of technology innovation, including capabilities at oxide or low temp polyoxide or other higher level technologies. And then the highest level is the ability to develop complete ecosystems. And there really only the two Koreans apply, LGD and SDC. So the two Japanese we're going to talk about today are Sharp and JDI. And JDI was a roll-up of many of the small display companies in Japan that were all put together into one company. And JDI recently has actually acquired back its child JOLED's R&D people, and I would have guessed their patents too when JOLED went bankrupt. So you've got JDI and Sharp in Japan, and actually they are both pretty damn strong fortresses in terms of technology. So what we're going to argue is what are the options for Japan, given they are technologically strong but actually capacity very weak, as we'll see. So just to put it in context, I think people in the industry would know this, but it may be less clear from the outside. Japan is less than 5% of the total industry on a capacity basis. So if you say the industry is about 400 million square meters, Japan is less than 5% of that. And of the capacity, I would say probably 2/3 of that at least is Sharp, with the remaining third being JDI. But you're talking about a very small capacity position overall. And China's come from nothing over the last decade to now being more than 70%. But from a technology position, Japan is very strong. So both Sharp and JDI have, to different degrees, elements of these technologies. So they're both pretty much world-class, Sharp specifically in oxide, although JDI has some real capabilities. Also the same in low-temp polysilicon, so I would assume also in LTPO, all of that would be perfectly within the realms of those two companies in terms of device development. Both of which have played with OLED at different times, and Sharp even at some point in the past, when it thought it was getting real money from Foxconn, started talking about its ideas in OLED that were actually novel. They've been working in QDEL more recently, and the Japanese have been working on inkjet printing, well, both of them to different degrees. You can argue they're fascinated with device level and pixel level innovations. I can think of quite a few of those for JDI. They've been interested in low power, and then eLeap, which has also come to the table recently, is another thing that JDI has been working on heavily. So what you could see is two companies that together represent less than 5% of industry capacity, but in terms of industry technology actually represented a whole lot more than that. So you could argue to some degree that they're already in some sort of collaboration with others. Sharp has some share ownership still from Foxconn, and that percentage seems to move around all the time. And at the time when this original deal was put together, I did quite a lot of work, which is represented here and was actually published by Wiley, on the merger integration plan that could have been between Foxconn, Innolux, and Sharp. And frankly, if they'd pulled it off together, there would have been really the potential that that grouping could be one of the true industry leaders. And I just think the Japanese lobbied Terry Gou very heavily to please manage us at arm's length, and I actually think that was a mistake in terms of value creation, in terms of role in the industry that they could have been. While it's probably protected technology in Japan, I'm not sure that it actually created the most shareholder value or even the most benefit potentially for Sharp. So I wonder whether or not this relationship needs reinvigorating on a corporate strategy basis where they actually start moving forward as a joint group, or whether or not Sharp needs to somehow break with them and find another large partner so that they can use their value of their technology to their benefit. When you don't have the capacity and don't have the capability on the capital markets to raise large amounts of money to play it yourself, then playing it through others and joint ventures and or other technology licensing agreements that leave you money that enable you to go on to the next thing might be the way to go. And so then, we've got the same thing going on now between JDI and HKC, which, as we mentioned before, is a low-end large LCD player. And so you've got, basically the combination of very high-end Japanese technology with small amounts of capacity with low-end large amounts of capacity from China. Now, it could be a marriage made in heaven. I think it's going to be an HR nightmare, and the emotional incentives of the two different cultural groups to work together is going to be very challenging. But it could, as long as they can get refinanced on the basis of their potential also, because both companies haven't been particularly well positioned financially, then this really has some potential. But can they get the groups of people together in collaborative teams with enough resourcing to pull off technology innovations that transfer? That'll be really interesting to see. So you could argue that actually both Japanese chess pieces are already in play to some degrees. It's just whether they are the right partnerships and whether they are set up to deliver value back to corporate Japan and set up to actually bring benefit to the display industry. And so, what are the real strategic options for Japan? Now, building an industry on its own that gets back up the leadership board on its own isn't going to happen. So that's what Korea wants to do. They want to put down 49 billion in capital to move Korea back to the front. Well, okay, that's not something that's going to happen in Japan. They are simply too far behind. But they are sitting on frontier technologies, as I want to call them, where they have real capabilities at a whole range of things, or they could do with this real innovation capability. Plus, they are very strong in the automotive industry, so that's by the by. But they have frontier level technology capability. Then there are clearly some tech deals going on, tech transfer deals and joint ventures going on. Both of them, as we've explained, are in some sort of relationship, although I keep questioning what is the right relationship to maximize total value. And then I do wonder that Japan Inc. might pick up a little bit of corporate purchasing, as far as I'm aware, as far as people get more and more worried about the proportion of LCD capacity that's now in China or across the Taiwan Strait. I think corporates will start thinking that maybe they need to protect some of that risk by more purchases from Japan. And I think Japan can make something out of this. They have capabilities. They are very clearly geopolitically distinctly different. And I think actually for corporate sourcing for some large, big companies, they should look much more at the role of Sharp and JDI. And then, will they actually eventually become acquisition targets completely? I mean, you could argue in the Foxconn Sharp case, they've been partially acquired. I think, will it go to a full extreme? Would Japan is even prepared to let go such jewels that they used to have? I don't know. But anyway, there are certainly... So it's the corporate strategy side of value maximization that fascinates me with options for Japan in general. So that's what I actually think Japan's got a period of time now where it brings some value to the industry. It's very clear that BOE and HKC and many of the other Chinese actually do need a technology influx. They're trying their best to move up the ranks on their own. I think China Star's actually got its own chance, but again was in the past relying on Japanese technology. Japan is a potential chess piece that enables fundamental movement up the innovation ladder. And I'm really concerned that they get fair value for that, and it's not been clear that that's always happened in the past. So I'm fascinated to see whether or not they can put together the right corporate deals that sees enough value for Japan in the same way that where China is actually prepared to pay, because they are getting entry to premium technology. It's just making sure they're willing to understand what that's worth and how it changes their competitiveness long term also. And so then, does Japan really have the appetite to be aggressive to maximize the value of its technology? That's my sort of fascination with this one. So to talk a little bit about my business and Hendy Consulting's business, we're management consultants to the display industry, which means we ask a range of different questions than market researchers do, such as is the technology of the client any good? How can you improve the competitiveness? How do we set up a joint development agreement with the display industry? Should I actually put down capacity either as a display player or a novel display player or as a supply chain partner? How should I put down capacity? How do I mitigate risk? What is the right timing? How do you do it in combination with which partner? How do I build my business? How do I market enter? All of these questions are the sort of questions we ask, and those are different questions than the ones that you would answer with market research. So I would hope that companies that might be interested would reach out to us through LinkedIn direct message or through email, through YouTube. All are possible. And we have covered a very broad range of technologies recently and assignments, and so really are very well positioned in the display industry to give advice to you on how to improve your decision making in displays. And to my YouTube viewers, this is video number 46. I hope you're finding them interesting. I try to pick off 2 to 3 topics a week of industry high-level value, trying to cover OLED, LCD, microLED and other technologies, and try to bring a sort of high-level picture on what's going on and why. I've certainly had some feedback from people that they like the videos, so I hope more people subscribe, and you can send me feedback also and more ideas on things you'd like us to cover. Have a good day. Bye.